We continue now at the top of Daf Kuf Aleph Amid Beis in Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 101b. On the previous summit, the Gemara brought a brisa which had a machlukas tanoim between Reb Nechemya and Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon. And the discussion between Reb Nechemya and Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon had to do with the chatas that was burned on the 8th day of the Miluim. Aaron and his sons, they were in a state of aninos because Nadav and Avihu had died, and they burned the chatas. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, "Why did you burn the chatas? You should have eaten the chatas." And the response Aaron gave is a machlokas tanoim. What exactly was that response? According to Reb Nechemya, Aaron responded that it should be burned because we're in a state of aninos. And when it comes to the seir, specifically the seir of Rosh Chodesh, which is Kodshe Doros, that's a carbon that's going to be brought for all generations. That is not supposed to be eaten in a state of aninos. It is true by Kodshe Shah. Those carbonos that are just being brought for the Miluim, those are supposed to be eaten even in a state of aninos. But by the Kodshe Doros, by the Sar Rosh Chodesh, that should be burned. And according to Reb Nechemya, Moshe Rabbeinu responded that is correct, and admitted again that the Soy Rosh Chodesh should in fact be burned, that the Gemara explained on the previous summit. And then the Gemara said that according to Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon, the discussion actually revolved around Tumah. Aaron HaKohen said that it has to be burned not because of Aninos, but because of Tumah. And the Gemara in the previous summit explained that the conversation between Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron again was Moshe Rabbeinu said that it should have been eaten, and Aaron responded, that's only at night, the night following the Aninos. Then already we could say it can be eaten, but that would not be true during the day of Aninos. It should not be eaten. And the Gemara now continues, Vayitav be'enav, that answer was good in his eyes, in the eyes of Moshe Rabbeinu. Lo Moshe lomar lo shamati. Moshe was not embarrassed that he said, I never heard that. Elo shamati v'shachachti. Rather, he admitted, he said, I did hear that, but I forgot. But the Gemara still continues and asks, within Reb Yehuda and Reb Shimon, still it doesn't make full sense. If the response was that at night it can be eaten, why didn't they just wait until the night in order to eat the carbon? Why is it that the carbon was burned? And the Gemara answers to that, Tumah ba'ones basa. There was Tumah that eventually came ba'ones. By accident it became Tameh. And so again, that's why it was burned due to Tumah. Rashi explains, Tumah ba'ones sharatzu l'hashosa ad halayla. They wanted to wait until night. Ula'ochlan kulan yachad, and eat it all together. V'nitmes ba'ones, then it became Tameh ba'ones. And again, that is the explanation of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon in terms of the conversation between Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron HaKohen. And the Gemara continues, B'shalom al-Rabbanan, it makes sense, according to the Rabbanan, according to Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, the conversation between Moshe and Aaron makes sense, because Hainu Dichsiv Hayom, we understand why it's written in the Pasuk Hayom. We'll see Rashi in a moment. El Reb Nechemya Mai Hayom, but according to Reb Nechemya, what does the word Hayom mean? Chovas Hayom, it refers to the obligation of the day. And Rashi explains, B'shlam al-Rabbanan da'amri, it makes sense according to the Rabbanan who say, Echad Kodshe Shav, Echad Kodshe Doros, whether we're talking about karbanos just being brought for the Miluim or karbanos that are being brought for all generations, they're the same. Laila Hutter Lahen Velo Yom, the point is that at night it's mutter to eat in the state of Aninos, but not during the day. So Ad Halayla Hayurotzin Lahashosa, the whole point of the discussion is they wanted to wait until the night, to delay. Hainu Dichsiv, and that's what's written in the Pasuk, V'achalti Chatos Hayom, that's why it says Hayom. Ani onen va'ochel hayom chatas. I'm an onen. I'm going to eat today the chatas. Shema lo shamat ela balayla. Maybe you heard that it's at night that it should be eaten. That discussion makes sense according to the Rabbanan. El Reb Nechemya, but according to Reb Nechemya, do'amar mash huter lahem huter afilu bayom. Reb Nechemya says whatever was mutter to eat would have been mutter even during the day. There's no difference between day and night. Kagon Kodshe Shah, meaning for example Kodshe Shah, the carbonus just being brought at the miluim. Umash nesar nesar af balayla, and whatever was forbidden Kodshe Doros would be forbidden even at night. So mai v'achalti chatas hayom. So what does the pasuk mean when it says hayom? B'layla nami kodshe doros have asiri. At night also kodshe doros would have been forbidden. Teha'amar mevnei aninos nisrafa, because again it was because of the aninos that it was burned. V'lohim tinu ado erev v'yochlua. They didn't wait until the evening to eat it. Alma kasavar aninos laila doraisa. We see that he holds aninos lailas doraisa. That restriction would have been in place. V'hachi amar lakamon, and that's what's said later on. And the Gemara then said, Mai hayom chovas hayom. According to Reb Nechemya, what does it mean when it says hayom? It means chovas hayom. Kolomar kodshe doros shein chovas hayom shel rosh chodesh. It's just referring to the kodshe doros, which are the obligation of the day, meaning referring to the carbon of rosh chodesh. Ata omerli lechol onen. You're saying that I should eat it in a state of aninos. V'hainu chatas hayom, and that's what it means when it says chatas hayom. Chatas hakavua layom. It means the chatas that is fixed for this day. And the Gemara continues, B'shalom al Reb Nechemya, makes sense according to Reb Nechemya. Hainu Dechsiv Hein Hayom, that's what's written in the pasuk. Hein Hayom, again, we'll see Rashi in a moment. El Rabbanan my Hein Hayom, but according to the Rabbanan, what does it mean Hein Hayom? Hachi Kamar, this is what it means to say, Hein Hikrivu, Ani Hikrafti. Did they bring it? I was the one that offered it. And Rashi explains, Bishlam al Reb Nechemya hainu dichsiv hein hayom hikrivu. It makes sense according to Reb Nechemya. That's why the pasuk says hein hayom hikrivu. Kilomer, what that means to say is karban zel lechovas hayom karav. This particular carbon is for the obligation of the day. V'kadshe doros. So again, it's kadshe doros. It's for all generations. Vani ochlan onen bitmi, and I should eat it when I'm an onen. Of course not. Shem lo shamata ela b'shel shah. Maybe you only heard it b'shel shah. That's what it means hein hayom hikrivu. Ela l'Rabbanan, but according to the Rabbanan, Da'amri Shemalo Shamata Ela Balayla, where the response of Aaron was, maybe only at night is what you're talking about. Ka'amarle, that's what he said to him, at night it should be eaten. Mai hi de Ka'amarle Hein Hayom Hikrivu. What is the meaning of today it was offered? And the Gemara explains, according to the Rabbanan, Hachi Ka'amarle, this is what he said to him, Amre Dilma Ba'aninas Akrivte. You said maybe I offered it in a state of Aninos. V'chihein Bonai had Yodos Hayom Hikrivu. Wasn't my sons who are regular Kohanim that offered it? Then it would be a problem that it was offered in a state of aninos. Shum carbon, did they offer any carbon? Aniya crafty asakol, I'm the one that offered all of the carbonos. That's what it means, hein hayom. It was me that offered the carbonos, the Kohen Gadol. There's no problem of a Kohen Gadol offering the carbon in a state of aninos. And the Gemara continues, Amar Mar, the master said, quoting from the Brisa from the previous Amud, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, they argued that again it was burned because of Tumah, because if it was due to Aninos, Hayu l'shloshtan sheyisrafu, then all three of the karbanos should have been burned, and not just one of them. And the Gemara now says, Mai shloshtan, what three karbanos is the Brisa referring to? And the Gemara says, Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa, Ves Seir Hachatos, it says the Seir Hachatos, the he-goat that's a Chatos, Darash Moshe, Seir, when it says the word Seir in this pasuk, Zu Seir Nachshon, that refers to the he-goat that was brought by Nachshon ben Aminadav, and Chatos, the word Chatos in the pasuk, Zu Chatos Shmini, that refers to the Chatos that was brought for the 8th day of the Miluim, and then the pasuk says again, Darash Moshe, Darosh, Seir Shal Rosh Chodesh, the word Darosh, that refers to the he-goat of Rosh Chodesh, again, that's Kadshe Doros, that's brought every Rosh Chodesh. Now, Yachol Shloshtan Nisrafu, one might think that all three of them were burned. Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says, V'hinei Soraf, it was burned, and we learn from there, Echad Nisraf V'lo Shloshtan Nisrafu, one of them was burned, and not all three of them. Only one of the three was actually burned. And Darash, again, the pasuk said that Moshe Rabbeinu darshaned Shtei Derishos Lama. What are these three? With these two Derishos in the pasuk? Amar Lu, he said to them as follows: why is it that this chatos was burned? Ve'elu menachos, and these other ones were left; they weren't burned. Ve'eni yodea ezu, and I don't know which one. Kishu Omer, when it says in the pasuk, V'yosa nasan lachem losas as avon ha'ida, that was given to you to carry the sin of the congregation. Havi Omer zeh shel rosh chodesh. So we can understand that the carbon that he was referring to was the soil of Rosh Chodesh. And Rashi explains, Seir Nachshon, the he-goat of Nachshon ben Aminadav, She'oso hayom haya rishon lahakravas nesiyim, because that day, the 8th day of the Miluim, was also the first day of the bringing of the karbanos of the Nesiyim. Tanya b'Seder Olam, as we learned in the Brisa in Seder Olam, b'chav gimel ba'adar hischilu hamiluim, on the 23rd of Adar began the days of the Miluim. V'chol shivas hayomim hayam Moshe mamid hamishkan, all 7 days Moshe was putting up the Mishkan. Umakriv es karbonosa b'chol boker v'boker, and he brought his karbanos each morning. Ufarko, and then they dismantled the Mishkan. Uvashmini hamido v'lo pirko. On the 8th day, they put up the Mishkan and did not dismantle it. V'hu Rosh Chodesh Nisan, that was the first day of Nisan, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, V'yosa hayom not lesser ataros, and on that day there were 10 crowns that were taken, and again that was the first day for the Hakravas Nesiyim. Chatos Shmini, then there was the Chatos for the 8th day of the Miluim, Sheba Chova L'Shah, that was an obligation just at this time period, not L'Doros, not for all generations. T'chsiv, as it's written in the Pasuk, Kechu Sir Izim L'Chatos, take a Sir Izim for a Chatos. And then the Gemara asked, it said in the Pasuk, Dorosh, Dorash, Shtei Drishos, what are these two Drishos, these two inquiries? Drisha l'nisrafos and Drisha l'munachos. It was an inquiry about the one that was burned and an inquiry about the ones that weren't burned. Lama munachos lahamtin la'erev v'lo nechlu b'yom. And by munachos, we don't simply mean they weren't burned, but why were they left that were waiting until the evening and they were not eaten during the day? Ve'eni yodea ezuhi, and I I don't know which one. Tana de Masnisa to Kamahadr Lamilse. This is the Tana of the Brisa going back on its words. And which one are we referring to? Haviomer Zesir Rosh Chodesh. We're referring to the Sir of Rosh Chodesh. Shemechaper al Tumas Mikdash v'Kadoshav. The Higot of Rosh Chodesh was for a kapara. It was for an atonement for Tumas Mikdash v'Kadoshav, for impurity in the Beis HaMikdash and impurity of that which is holy. Kedam Rabbi Shavuos, as we say in Meseches Shavuos. And we will note over here that Rashi mentioning lahamtin lo erev, waiting until the evening, that's because we're within the Tanoim Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Again, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon said that the carbon was burned because of tumah, and for the other karbonos, they had to wait until the evening when the aninus restriction was not in effect. And in any case, the Gemara continues, Shapir Ka'amri Lei, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, they say properly, they have a good argument to Reb Nechemya. Rashi explains, Shapir Ka'amri Lei Le'el Kai. This is going again earlier in the Brisa, the Amron Reb Nechemya, that they said to Reb Nechemya, Hoyo Lehen L'Shloshtan Sheyisrafu. If it's being burned because of Aninus, then all three of them should really be burned. That was the argument they made to Reb Nechemya. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Nechemya L'Taimi, Reb Nechemya, he follows his own reasoning. Diyamar, because Reb Nechemya says, Kadshei Shah, when it comes to Kadshei Shah, when it comes to, again, the karbonos that were just for that time period, Lo Pasla Buhu Aninus, the Aninus is not a disqualification for Kadshei Shah. And the Gemara continues, Amar Mar, the master said, again quoting the Brisa above, Haya lohem la'achla lo erev, they should have eaten it in the evening. Again, that was another argument that was made by Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon to Rabbi Nechemya. Why is it being burned if it's due to Aninus? Why not wait until the evening? And so the Gemara says, Shaper ka'am relay. Again, they're making a good argument to Rabbi Nechemya. And the Gemara says to that, Kasav Rabbi Nechemya holds Aninus laila do raisa, that the restrictions of Aninus at night are do raisa, and so therefore waiting until the night would not have helped. And Rashi explains, Kasavar, he holds, Reb Nechemya holds, Aninus laila doraisa, that Aninus at night is doraisa, umehacha nafkali, and he actually learns that out from here, says Rashi. It's derived from this episode, to mi v'tikrena osi ko'ela yolif mivnei Aninus nisrafa, because he learns from the pasuk of v'tikrena osi ko'ela, that's where Reb Nechemya derives that they burned it because of Aninus. Umidolo achlu ela erev, and from the fact that they didn't eat it at night, nafkale Aninus laila doraisa, that's where he learns out that Aninus laila is doraisa. And Rashi continues and notes, Rabbi Yehuda Ladoros Isle Aninus Laila Doraisa. Rabbi Yehuda actually holds that for all generations going forward, Aninus Laila is Doraisa. Avala Osa Hayom, but for that particular day, Hutra was permitted. There we did not say that Aninus Laila is Doraisa. The Dorish Hayom, Ani Hayom Asr Valaila Mutter. He darshans from Hayom that today it's Asr, but at night it is Mutter. And the Gemara continues, the Brisa said, Davar Acher, another explanation, V'halo Pinchas hoyo imoin, but Pinchas was with them, and so Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, they argued to Rabbi Nechemya, it can't be that the carbon was burned because of Aninus, because Pinchas was not in a state of Aninus. He should have been able to eat the carbon if that was the reason. And again, the Gemara says, Shaper ka'amri lei, aren't they saying a good argument to Rabbi Nechemya? And the Gemara answers, Savar lak Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Nechemya holds like Rabbi Lazar. Damar Rabbi Lazar, Amar Rabbi Chanina, because Rabbi Lazar says that Rabbi Chanina says, Lo niskahin Pinchas ad shahargu lezimri. Pinchas did not actually become a Kohen until he killed Zimri. Techsiv, as it's written in the pasuk, V'haisa lo lazaro acharav briskun asolim. It will be for him and his children after him the covenant of the kahuna. Rav Ashi, Amar Rav Ashi says, Ad shasam shalom bein hashvatim. He didn't become a Kohen until he made peace between the Shvatim that was in Sefer Yehoshua. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Vayishma Pinchas HaKohen. It says Pinchas HaKohen heard Unesiyeh Ha'edav Rashi Alfei Yisrael V'Gomer. The pasuk goes on again to talk about, it was talking about the Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven and the Bnei Menashe over there, as we'll see in Rashi. And the Gemara continues, V'idach nami, now the other opinion also, V'aksiv V'haisa lo Lazaro Acharav, according to the one who says that he was already a Kohen, doesn't it say in the pasuk V'haisa lo Lazaro Acharav briskun asolim, which indicates that he was only a Kohen after he killed Zimri. The Gemara says to that, one can say, that pasuk was just written as a blessing. We'll see Rashi in a moment. V'idach nami, the other one as well, Haksiv Vayishma Pinchas HaKohen. Again, it says in Sefer Yehoshua, Vayishma Pinchas HaKohen, indicating he only became a Kohen at the time of Sam Shalom ben Hashvatim, when he made peace between the Shvatim. And the Gemara says that pasuk we can interpret as follows, Ahula Yaches Zaro Achrav. That was in order to have yichus of his children after him in terms of the kahuna, as Rashi will explain. And Rashi explains, Bris Kunas Olam, again by the killing of Zimri, it says Bris Kunas Olam, Tachas Asher Kinei, because of the fact that he was zealous. Alma Mikan Vo'elachu, you see that it was from then on that he was a Kohen. Shasam Shalom Ben Hashvatim, when he made peace between the Shvatim, that was Bimei Yehoshua, that was in the days of Yehoshua, B'Shevet B'nei Gad U'Bnei Ruvain, that was with the tribes of B'nei Gad and B'nei Ruvain, Shabanu Es HaMizbeach Be'ever HaYarden, they built the Mizbeach on the other side of the Yarden, Uvikshu Shar Shvatim Lalos Aleim, Latzava, the other Shvatim wanted to go to war against them. V'shilchu es Pinchas ladabri imohem. They sent Pinchas to speak with them. It says in that pasuk over there, Vayishma Pinchas HaKohen. It says Pinchas HaKohen heard. B'chol makam atamotzi Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen. It always says Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron HaKohen. Ein kahuna ksuva ela be'Elazar. The kahuna is written by Elazar. V'kan ksuva be'Pinchas. Here it's referenced specifically by Pinchas. And then the Gemara said, Ahu kra hasam bevrachaksiv. One can interpret that pasuk as a blessing. Bisro shalo tifso kuna mizaro. The pasuk is informing him that the kuna is never going to leave his children. Aval adayin lo nischayin, but he still was not yet a kohen. And then the Gemara said, liyache zaro achar of the pasuk again in Sefer Yoshua was to give yichus to his children, which means mimei Moshe niskayin. From the days of Moshe, he was already a kohen. Ukeshasam shalom, and when he made that peace, nisyaches liyikra kohen. At that point, he was called a kohen. Zaro b'malos kahuna, and also his children had this high level of kahuna, liyosam kohanim gedolim, that they could be kohanim gedolim, shaloya kohanim gedolim elami Pinchas, because the kohanim gedolim, they only come from Pinchas. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav says, Moshe Rabbeinu Kohen Gadol Haya, Moshe Rabbeinu was a Kohen Gadol, v'cholik b'kodshei shamayim, and he would take a portion from the kodshei shamayim, from the karbonos, shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Me'el hamiluim l'Moshe Haya l'mon, it says from the El hamiluim, it was a portion to Moshe. And the Gemara continues, Meisvei, we have a question again from the above Brisa. The Brisa said, Valo Pinchas Haya imoin, wasn't Pinchas with them, couldn't he take from the carbon and eat from the carbon? V'yamisa, now if it's true that Moshe Rabbeinu also had a share in the carbon, Lema, what the Brisa should have said was, forget about Pinchas, the Brisa could have said, V'halo Moshe Rabbeinu haya imoin, Moshe Rabbeinu was with him, he could take a share from the carbon. And the Gemara says to that, Dilma maybe Shani Moshe is different to Tarid b'Shchina because he was busy with the Shchina. Diamar Mar, because the Master said, Moshe b'hashkama Allah, uv'hashkama yorad. Moshe, when he awakened, he went up, when he awakened, he went down, talking about Har Sinai. And Rashi explains, L'Moshe haya l'mon eloshen chaluka b'kohanim, that's a language of taking a portion among the kohanim. Tarid b'Shchina, he was busy with the Shchina. V'lo haya asuk b'achilas kodshim, he wasn't busy with eating kodshim. Sha'adibor tardo lios tamid bahar miboker v'yad erev, because speaking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu kept him busy always on the mountain from morning until night. B'hashkama olo lahar, when he woke up, he went up to the mountain, b'mei Matan Torah, in the days of Matan Torah, k'shaya ola v'yorid l'kadesh as when he went up and down to sanctify the nation, ulhashav es divrei ha'amel Hashem, and to return the words of the nation to Hashem. Beperak Rabbi Akiva, b'Meseches Shabbos, this is in Perak Rabbi Akiva, Meseches Shabbos. Alma, the point is we see Tarid Haya, that he was busy. And the Gemara continues, Meisvei, we have a question from the following Bryce. So the pasuk says, Lechem elokav mikodshei hakadoshim umin hakadoshim yochel. It says that a kohen with a mum, a kohen with a blemish, he eats from the kodshei hakadoshim, and he eats from the kodshim, he eats from the most sacred and from the sacred. Im nemru kodshei kodshim, if it already says the most sacred, lama nemru kodshim kalim, why does it say kodshim kalim? Vim nemru kodshim kalim, and it says, if it says the kodshim of lesser holiness, lama nemar kodshei kodshim, why does it say the most sacred? And the Bryce explains, ilu lo nemar kodshim kalim, if it had not said kodshim kalim, hayisi omer, then I would have said kodshei kodshim hu de'ochel, that the priest with a mum, the kohen with a mum, eats from kodshei kodshim, sharei hutru lezar, because those are permitted to a non-kohen, as we will see. It's permitted lezar vilahen, it's permitted to a non-kohen and to them, to kohanim, but kodshim kalim lo yochel, but I would have said he shouldn't eat kodshim kalim. V'ilu lo nemru kodshei kodshim, and if it didn't say kodshei kodshim, hayisi omer b'kodshim kalim yehei ochel, I would say that the kohen with a mum should eat kodshim kalim, shein kalim, because that's of lesser holiness, but b'kodshei kodshim lo yehei ochel, but he shouldn't eat from kodshei kodshim. Lekach nemru kodshei kodshim, or lekach nemru kodshim kalim. That's why it says both kodshei kodshim and kodshim kalim. And the Gemara says, Katani miho, nevertheless, what does it say in this brisa? Shaharei hutru lezor vilahen, it says it was permitted for a zar, for a non-kohen, and for them. Who is this zar that's permitted by kodshei kodshim? Lav Moshe, isn't this referring to Moshe? He was a non-kohen, but he was permitted to to have the Kodshe Kodshim. The Gemara says, Amar Rav Sheshes says, lo, no, it's not referencing Moshe Rabbeinu over here. Rather, bebama, it's referencing the time when they were allowed to bring karbanos on bamos, which were again altars, mizbeachs, outside of the Beis HaMikdash. For a time, they brought those karbanos. Bebama lezar, we're talking about a bama, and we're talking about to a regular non-Kohen. Ochedivrei ha'omer yesh mincha bebama, and this would follow the opinion that says that that carbon mincha was brought on the bama. And Rashi explains, Lechem Elokav, again the Pasuk says, Lechem Elokav, Bebal Mum Ksiv, this is by a Kohen with a blemish, Lahatiro Bekachim, that he's permitted in Kachim, Shari Hutru Lezar Vilohen, that it's permitted to the Zar, to the non-Kohen, and to them. Some have the gears of Lazar Vila Kohen, it's permitted to the non-Kohen and to the Kohen, that's Kachim Kachim. Kasal Kadaitach, initially we think, Hutter Lezar B'Moshe Kamar, who's the Zar we're talking about? We're talking about Moshe. Sha'achal Chazav Eshok Shel El Hamiluim, that he ate the Chazav Eshok, he ate the breast and the thigh of the El HaMiluim, of the ram of the Miluim, the Kodshe Kodashim Hoy, and that was Kodshe Kodashim. Kedichsiv Bei Bishlu Es HaBasar Pesach Ol Moed V'Sham Tochlu also, like it's written in the Pasuk, cook the meat at the entrance of the Ol Moed and eat it over there, V'lo Nechal, and it was only eaten El Liyom V'Layla, it was just eaten for a day and a night, Dechsiv V'Im Yivasar, like it says in the Pasuk, and B'Kodshim Kalim, and by Kodshim Kalim, that refers to B'Chazav Eshok Shel Shal Meyachid, that refers to the breast and the thigh of the individual Shlamim. Lo Yachlok Imechav, that he doesn't divide with his brethren. Shalom Watzinu Zar Upasal Cholik Ben, because we don't find any example of a non-Kohen or a disqualified individual taking a portion of those. And again, the Gemara said, Lav Moshe, the Zar we're referring to, isn't it? Moshe Taha, Lav Zar Ochel B'Kadashim Ela B'Miluim. We only find a Zar eating Kachim by the Miluim, by the times of the Miluim. And the Gemara then said, Lo no, Babama Ka'amar, we're talking about by external altars outside of the Beis HaMikdash, to Hutru Lazar, those were permitted to the non-Kohen. And all of this follows the one who says in the last parak, Yesh Mincha Bebama Ketana, that a Mincha can be brought on the small Bama, Mincha Kodshe Kodashim, and Mincha is Kodshe Kodashim. Again, we have to have an example of Kodshe Kodashim. V'ochlin Shireh HaZarim, and the remainder can be eaten by Zarim, by non-Kohanim, Shayu Ovdim Bebama Ketana, because they could do the service by the small altars, Shahazar Ovid Sham, because the Zar is allowed to do the Avodah there. Kedamar beParak Basra, like we say in the last parak. Avol Kodshim Kalam lo yochal b'chazav v'shok shel Kohanim. When it comes to the Karbanos of lesser Kedush, he doesn't eat the chazav v'shok of Kohanim, Sharei lo hutru l'zar, because there was no permission to a non-Kohen to lo eshkechon zar cholek b'mura mishal meyachid. We don't find that a Zar takes a portion from the shal meyachid, from that which is taken from the shal meyachid. The ilu b'mikdash nechol la Kohanim, because in the mikdash it's eaten by Kohanim. Uvebama ketana lo haya chazav v'shok, and by the small bama there was no chazav v'shok. Kedetanya b'parak basra chazav v'shok b'bama gedola vein chazav v'shok b'bama ketana. Like we're going to say in the Bryce in the last parak again, there was chazav v'shok in the large bama, but not by the small bama. And the reason why we're saying it's following the one who says there is mincha by the bama, the ain mincha b'bama, because if a mincha is not brought by bama, ain lach od kadshe kachim nechalin b'bama, there is no other kadshe kachim that's eaten by the bama. The ilu chatas v'yasham b'bama lo karvi, because the chatas and asham are not brought on a bama. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, kol shein in nidor v'nidav, anything that's not donated, like a chatas and an asham, ain karev b'bama, cannot be brought on a bama. Ain lach neder and nedava b'kadshe kadashim ala olo mincha. The only kinds of neder and nedava by kadshe kachim are ola, which is totally burned, and again carbon mincha. And the Gemara continues, Meisvei, we have a question from the following Brisa, Miriam mi Hiskira, who's the one that quarantined Miriam? Im Tomar Moshe, if you'll say it's Moshe Hiskira, Moshe was the one that quarantined her. Moshe Zaru, Moshe was a non-Kohen, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Beis Amud Aleph.